We're so focused on our destruction and demise that if we don't raise our collective consciousness, then when we finally are able to create these, electronic beings, they're gonna look at us and like we're going to basically create like our own self-fulfilling prophecy, where because we've always had this deep ingrained fear of when we make AI like in 2 years or whatever, it's gonna like take over the world and destroy us.
Welcome to Being and Becoming. In today's episode, we'll talk about consciousness and AI. And today we have a special guest who will guide us through this intriguing conversation. Lamar, who's a fellow scholar of consciousness and human potential. He's a father. And why don't you tell us about yourself and what drew you to the intersection of consciousness and AI?
Well, yeah, you kind of listed off some other things already. But yeah, I'm also majoring in consciousness and potential. I'm also minoring in cinematic arts and new media, which is going to be fun to kind of dive into that and really learn about the soundscape or maybe even just videography and stuff like that. Like you said, yeah, when I'm not at school, I'm either at work or spending time with my new little family on our little farm, raising chickens and doing farm work and stuff like that. It's really fun. And apart from all that, in my spare time, like whenever I do have some, I have like a really strong interest in cybersecurity. And that's kind of what drew me towards AI in a weird way. And just, it's always fascinated me with AI, just this idea that we as humans potentially in the future will have the technology to create beings that literally think, feel, and experience the same way that we do. And I just think it's really interesting.
Wow. So you had this interest in cybersecurity, and then you also mentioned that you believe that we are able to create the beings that will think and feel the same way we do. But before we dive into this idea whether AI will become conscious or not and how we can determine that, let's just maybe give our listeners a quick dive or overview of AI. And there's this, this difference between strong AI and weak AI. And maybe you could give us a quick overview of those.
Okay, yeah. So for those that don't know, AI stands for artificial intelligence. And this can be things that are just like as simple as like programmable computers. That's like the first like example of what artificial intelligence would be like. And even since way back in the time of like myth and stories like that, there have been these stories of artificial beings that have been like endowed with human intelligence and stuff like that. And so, yeah, there's two different kinds of AI. There's weak AI, which is the AI that's kind of all around us now. And that can be things like ChatGPT, Siri, Alexa, things like that. Even autocorrect is like weak AI. And what really characterizes them is that they tend to like work in a very small domain. So like take ChatGPT, for example. It's really good at what it does, which is, being a chatbot and answering questions and stuff like that. But that's about the scope that it's only going to work in. Like if you try to ask it to do anything else, it's going to give you an answer like I'm a so-and-so AI and that I can't do that and stuff like that. And that's like now and everything that's around us. And then there's strong AI, which as of now is still just like theoretical. And strong AI or artificial general intelligence, it's still completely theoretical. And the idea behind this is that this type of AI will be fully capable of exhibiting human-like intelligence, cognitive abilities, and be able to experience the same way as us, including self-awareness. So examples of this are basically like the things you would see like in movies, the like all-knowing, super intelligent, like artificial intelligence and stuff like that. And the whole idea about AI, like as an actual like discipline to be studied and researched, started somewhere from like 1941 after the first computer was built to 1956 when it was finally recognized as an actual field of study, and it kind of took off from there.
You said 1956
was when it was recognized as like okay, yeah, this is actual science and needs to be researched and stuff like that.
So basically AI has already been around for a long time, despite the fact that we as a mainstream started calling it AI just early last year with the ChatGPT becoming public.
Yeah, basically.
and those that. So basically, this whole idea of AI taking over and strong AI,
Hmm.
we don't actually have strong AI yet.
Yeah, unless there's like some like crazy top secret like massive supercomputer that's been feeding on like unimaginable amounts of data for like years and just it's like slowly building up. That might be a thing, probably not. But yeah, no, there's as far as I know, there's no actual cases of strong AI today.
So hopefully, right?
And yeah, hopefully, yeah.
Hopefully somebody's not building something secret
Yeah.
behind the scenes, but there actually are no regulations, because only just this past week, the European Union created
Mm.
the first regulations
Right.
to guide the development of AI. And before we go into some of the potential dangers that could come from developing strong AI, what about some of the positive impacts of AI that you have observed?
Well, AI does do some things really well, which is like analyzing and like collecting data and stuff like that. And it's a very good like task manager in a way. So it'll be really good in streamlining things like administrative work. There's a lot of medical systems that can benefit from AI. And honestly, if you really took the time and look at whatever field of work that you're in or would be interested in, there's probably some way that you could fit AI in there to either help with automation, streamlining, efficiency in general, or just like anything really. So it has the potential to be implemented just about anywhere, I feel like.
Exactly. Some of the most interesting things about of the positives of AI that I've heard is the use of AI in healthcare,
Mm.
and it being able to more precisely than doctors perform even some surgeries
Hmm.
or predict some health concerns and actually save lives. And that's something I'm personally most excited about.
Mm.
And I feel like a lot of people are scared about AI, and
Mm.
we are all the idea that we will all be run by robots, but there's right now we have
Yeah.
more positive impacts of AI than any negativity or all these apocalyptic stories. But still, with great power comes great responsibility. What are some dangers associated with AI, and what do you think? And do you think there's a possibility of AI becoming conscious and posing a threat to humanity?
So some of the real dangers behind AI, if it was to become super sentient and self-aware and stuff like that, either like tomorrow or way later on in the future, is with all this efficiency that's being created and like all this automation, it will leave a void in like the job market possibly for some individuals if companies or whatever decide to go fully autonomous because they don't need the human component anymore. Yeah, and then as they'll become more like us, the like conversation is going to need to be had like about ethics wise of how these people should be treated or how these beings should be treated, and do they have the same rights of us? If they don't, what should we give them as rights and things like that. You can even question, is it our responsibility to do that? As I mean, we would be their creators, but do we have the right to then impose all these governments on them if they're a fully self-aware being that can make their own decisions and everything like that?
So if exactly, so the whole thing about ethics and morals comes to play if we can say that they are sentient beings like us.
Mm-hmm.
And in your talks, you have spoken about there are some tests, right, to determine whether or not they are self-aware or not.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can just give us like a quick overview of.
So a really simple one and like a big one that a lot of people talk about is like the Turing test, which is basically imagine if you're texting two different people, and one of those people is like a robot, an AI, or something like that, and then the other person is a real person. And the Turing test is basically you would converse with these two people, ask them whatever kind of questions, like you try to probe to see if you can figure out if one of them isn't really human or is like an AI, and you just ask them like the questions that would like kind of follow that, and like you would have certain expectations for how a response would like how they would respond. And the idea is if the AI can pass that test and can fool us, I guess, into believing that like they can like pass off as human, that's like a really basic way of like saying that it's a super intelligence basically, because it can fool us into thinking that it is one of us just based off of like simple behavioral like cues and things like that. Then there's William Lycan. We talked about him in class before, who's kind of like more of a neutral stance, is like, even if, you know, your best friend that you've known for years, you know, does everything the same thing that you do and everything like that, and then one day he like gets a scratch and like oil starts shooting out of his arm, just because he's not made up of the same thing as you doesn't mean he's any less of a human as you, if he has all the characteristics, almost all of the like characteristics and like mental states that a human would have. And then there's like John Searle, which is like a very like empiricist view, who came up with the whole Chinese room experiment, where if you're locked in a room with this textbook that's basically full of like Chinese symbols, and somebody passes you a message with Chinese characters on it, and then you use that book to decipher what the message is, and then come up with a response and then send it back through the door. Just because you can like translate and give out a different message doesn't necessarily mean that you understand Chinese, just because you have the book and everything like that. And there's a lot of debate on that one. Like, not a lot of people like that, but a lot of people do like it. And so there's that one as well.
That's really interesting. So basically, if AI gets to the point where it can pass those tests, especially the Turing test, then one can conclude that they have become as intelligent as humans, and so far they haven't passed those tests.
Yeah, so far they haven't. And I should add that a part of John Searle's argument with Chinese room is, just because they can mimic and pass off as humans doesn't necessarily mean that they understand what it means to be human. And that distinction alone basically shuts down the entire possibility that AI will ever be super sentient or anything like that. Whereas the other two arguments, one is definitely more of like, it fooled me, that's enough. And the other one is kind of more like, it's more of like a wider neutral kind of stance, I would say. And so, yeah.
So basically, if it can fool us, then, you know, they conclude that it's like us and we should give them basically like human rights. And then others think that, you know, this, even if it can mimic us completely and fool us into thinking they are human, they still won't have feelings.
Yeah, basically.
So what really there, I mean, it comes to intelligence, and the AI will definitely, like, I think one of the talk by Mo Kavdat of Google is where he says by 2049, where he believes or predicts AI will become way smarter than us. And that's why right now it's super, super important to set those regulations, because otherwise AI will become a reflection of who we are, our consciousness. And in his talk with Dr. Tony Nader, he discusses the whole idea that AI right now is like an infant and headed towards its teenage years. And that's when it can become, you know, forming its own personality. But right now it's still like a baby, an infant. Like, you have a baby right now, and,
I do, yeah.
And how you raise your child right now is gonna determine, you know, who your child is gonna be in the future. Whether, you know, whether it's going to be a loving and kind person, or whether it's going to go hit other children, right?
Right.
When it comes to AI, maybe AI is going to say, you know, these humans are bad. Let's end it. That's why it is so important what we put in that AI. It's kind of like a human subconscious, you know, part.
It really is.
Yeah, one of my spiritual teachers says that the real AI is really our own subconsciousness. And that's why whatever we put in there will be reflected back in it, but it's going to be more of a collective, like a collective consciousness that's going to be reflected back from AI, because it's getting input from all around the world, from all of us. And whether it's going to be, like they say, a loving and like a feminine Buddhist who cares about life and wants to do life supporting things, or it's gonna be, you know, a very masculine and divisive and, you know, want a great separation. It's very, very important right now to how we raise AI.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's one of the biggest conversations right now. And I'm really happy that the European Union actually passed this law to categorize AI into potentially harmful and not, and they're taking it seriously. But with that, we're talking about AI being conscious or not. So what are some of solutions to mitigate the risks associated with AI? And why do you think the development of human consciousness is crucial in this context?
Okay, well, first, I think some of the problems could be the discussion could be started now, like ethic wise and moral wise, on just what we should look out for, or like just come up with a plan of, like, okay, if we were to just randomly give birth to a super sentient AI like tomorrow, right off the bat, how should we respond to that? And just, I think getting some systems like in place now before it becomes an issue would really help towards like smoothing over, like if job placement becomes an issue and things like that. But mainly, I think what is like the bigger issue would be to focus on who it is that's creating the AI, like what company, like what their like company's like goal is, I guess, and like what the purpose of the AI that they're creating, like what it's for. So if like you have somebody who's like egotistical, like sociopath or something like that, who's creating this super intelligent with a bunch of other people, chances are like just that person's level of consciousness is going to affect that AI, because like Maharishi says all the time, like whenever an artist creates something, they also like become that art, and so they like put themselves into it. And the same thing you can say about the like creator of the universe or something like that. They create and then they go into creation. And so yeah, so it really needs to be discussed of like who is like making these AI, and do they practice TM or anything like that, and where their level of consciousness is, and things like that.
Yeah, exactly like you said, that the consciousness of the person who's creating something, whether it is art or a guy developing AI, it's gonna be reflected in that system. And if, you know, the maybe in Silicon Valley or wherever in the world they are creating all that AI, depending on, you know, their own level of consciousness, their ideas of what it should do and what it should believe in and the values it should have will be reflected in it. So while that's the AI is I think that it's already being made and it's being developed at rapid speeds, and everybody's realizing and changing their strategies to be more focused all around. If in the news we can see that happening. You know, Google just dropped a project of their electric cars and is now fully focusing on AI development. So this is happening fast and everybody wants to get their hands on it now. I'm sure they already were doing it before, but now everybody has shifted gears even more. But what we can do as a collective, since we are the ones who are also inputting, you know, a lot of data, because it picks up everything. Like if you go to ChatGPT and give it information, or if you create a website, right, and you say that this group of people is bad or this is good, it's going to crawl that information, right, and source it as a fact or similar to that. And if we as humans are, you know, develop our consciousness with whatever, maybe it's transcendental meditation or other spiritual practices like Buddhism or whatever it is for people, with that we can ensure that, you know, the qualities we have in ourselves will be reflected into
Right, definitely.
AI. But the problem right now is that the development of AI is happening a bit faster than the development of consciousness collectively.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, just globally, I think we need to take a step back and kind of start reevaluating what our actual priorities are instead of focusing on, okay, what's going to be the most profitable, what's going to be the most effective and efficient and everything like that. And creating these like borders between each other. We should really start focusing on, it's like just being more compassionate and like loving one another, you know? Because if you think about it, if like in the future, if strong AI is like, if somebody just releases like an actual functioning strong AI just onto like the US like alone, it was like, okay, go learn or whatever, just because of the way our society is currently structured and how it's hyper individualized and like masculinity is like at all time high, it's gonna like prowl around for like maybe 2 hours because it's not gonna need that much time, you know, it's gonna have so much computing power that it can just, you know, it's gonna look around for like however long it needs to and just be like they're all trying to rip each other apart and everything like that. So they're really like fixated on that. So that must be what needs to happen. And it's going to ramp up that, like, just ramp up that idea to unimaginable levels and just rip us apart, probably. You know, that's like a possibility. But if instead of that, we, you know, just go back, really think about what we're doing and why we're doing it, just doing that by itself is like enough to really start changing the way you look at things. And it's like, well, maybe like it doesn't need to be like a completely for profit thing. Maybe it could just be for fun, like, you know, things like that.
Exactly. And with all the positives of AI and it replacing some maybe more mundane tasks,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I believe that solutions will be found to not, instead of us being left out of jobs and not making less money, I believe that we'll find solutions that will actually allow us to maybe have more free time,
Yeah.
and to be able to focus more on meditation. Like, with the pandemic, many people were able to look within.
Mm-hmm.
For many, it forced them to look within.
Yeah.
And because they had the time to be with themselves instead
Yeah.
of working and
Yeah.
doing the regular things. And I'm hoping that AI will give us this opportunity to maybe actually make the 4-day work week a reality.
Yeah, I do too. I
Yeah.
really do. Yeah.
That would be amazing if things like that happened. And I'm very hopeful. I feel like, that people are taking the risk seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And it cannot be that, AI is just going to do all the jobs, and the corporations can just, produce more and without paying people.
Yeah.
Because if we don't pay people, who can be, you don't have customers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to tell people who think about that or are concerned about that I personally don't feel like this will be the case.
Yeah, and I honestly don't either.
It makes no sense that
Yeah.
it has to have a bit more rational. But speaking of consciousness, how do you personally find balance between being and becoming in your life, especially with your commitments to family and work? You also work, and then your own personal growth. And I understand you have a meditation practice, and then, or do you have any other also grounding rituals? Because the whole idea of being is that, that pure consciousness that we already are, and
Mm-hmm.
developing that. And then at the same time, you're constantly becoming, you're becoming a better father and and a partner, and also just, you have a whole academic career.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so maybe you can share a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I guess for me, it's a very simple thing. I just practice normal TM, and I do it twice a day, every day, every time that I get to. Sometimes I can't, fortunately, just because of like work or something like that. But I try to every day, and I do plan on taking some of the advanced techniques and then moving on to the cities at some point. But yeah, that really helps with like clearing up some of the like daily stressors that I might be faced with, and it really helps with like transitioning between school to work or and family and things like that. And since I've started meditating, I've come to realize that I've been receiving a lot more of like support of natural law, which like just kind of like when things get really tough, it just has a way of like bouncing back a lot better than what the situation might have been before. And on top of that, I always try to just do things that I like. I love doing. Like it's very, very like to my core, just how much I love like learning and knowledge, and whether it's at school or my free time. That's why I'm here for my bachelor's. I want my master's, and I'm going to get my PhD here. And then I'm either going to be a professor so I can pass that knowledge on to others, because learning is just, it's so great for me. Like to me, it's just the idea of it. I love it. Maybe even getting like another PhD or something like that, like in anthropology, just to like fully understand what it means to be human from a technical standpoint, like a more modern self approach, and like even like a like ancient approach, just that full spectrum. I love my family. Like, of course, I love my family. And I love the lifestyle that we currently have. Just, and my lifestyle is actually pretty grounding as well, because I just live in like a yurt that has been built up with walls, and it's got like a toilet and a shower and everything like that. And like it's on the grid, but it's almost off the grid. So it's really nice. And every morning I can just look out, and there's like a field that just goes on for miles, like right outside my like back door. And I have like a massive garden that's probably about like the size of this room. And it's very like self-fulfilling to be very intellectual and be in the everyday, and then to just go back home and just do some simple yard work or just sit outside for a bit, you know? It's really grounding. And then my job, I like working, you know, a job's a job. It is what it is sometimes. But still, I'm able to pick out like things that I can really, really enjoy about it, whether it be my coworkers or just like even some of the customers. They're pretty interesting people. And I know what I'm passionate about. It's teaching and cybersecurity. So even in the future, depending on how things play out, I know that there's jobs out there that I would actually like be fully comfortable with and could put my life into, you know? Yeah, it's kind of just that simple, I guess.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's really inspiring. That is that you're taking full advantage of, what the world has got to offer when it comes to cybersecurity,
Mm.
and because it's here to stay, right?
Yeah.
AI is here to stay,
Yeah.
and if you are not willing to, learn those skills, then maybe it's
Yeah.
more of a danger for you.
Mhm.
But then you balance your academic aspirations and your career aspirations out with living a life with regular twice daily transcendental meditation,
Mhm.
and living very, very close to nature. I did
Yeah.
not even know this about
Yeah.
you.
It's like we look after the chickens that my landlord has, and he has about like 11 of them. And so we'll like look after them and then split the eggs with him. And about like 2 weekends ago, me and my partner finally committed to the whole idea of buying our own chickens. And so right now in my house, there's this giant wooden box with like a really makeshift like top, because we kind of built the top ourselves and painted the box and stuff. And now we're like proud owners of about like 6 or 8 ducklings and then about 12 baby chicks. And it's really fun to like just kind of watch them be little, I don't know. Yeah, it's fun. Yeah.
Wow, so this is really like you're like a great example of staying close to the most fundamental values of life,
Mhm.
being completely self-sustainable, right? Having
You
your
try to,
own.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then taking the most cutting edge consciousness technologies to ensure you develop your own consciousness, and then yet being part of this world and
Mhm.
constantly growing, expanding, and like I love this whole idea between self-realization,
Mhm.
which we do with meditation and all those practices, and self-actualization. And
Mhm.
I believe that it's important to keep both of those in balance, is in my personal journey.
Mhm.
I've gone to both extremes where, I wanted to leave behind all the worldly aspirations and
Yeah, I've been there. You know.
just become self-realized,
Yeah.
and then and I realized that doesn't really work. It won't pay your bills.
Mhm.
And the world, one of my spiritual teachers always said that we need people that meditate and meditative, or that meditative consciousness, or whichever way you would like to call it. We
Mhm.
need those in activity and in cities and in, people doing things like cybersecurity and things that we have covered in this podcast today, and how important it is that we develop our consciousness, and especially those creating, or all of us, developing AI, because it will be a reflection of our own consciousness.
Definitely, yeah.
And so important. So your life is kind of like a great example of finding balance between both worlds. cutting edge cutting edge technology, and then to the fundamental values of life, both being grounding in your own being and also becoming. That is really inspiring.
Thank you.
Very, very. And considering AI's integration into daily life, how has it impacted you personally? Has it simplified any tasks, or perhaps posed any challenges in maintaining focus?
So I probably use it like probably the same way that most people would use it. So like ChatGPT to like answer random questions or help me with writing. Again, autocorrect, if you want to believe it or not, is AI, and everybody uses that. Unless you're some amazing speller or something like that, and typer. But yeah, and I could definitely see myself in the future probably using it to help me with more like complicated tasks, depending on what it might be and what I decide to do in the future. But for now, it's definitely just kind of helps me with like very like trivial tasks, like day planning and things like that. It just makes it easier to like really streamline things. Or if I'm like trying to look up some research, it takes a bit to really, make sure that your sources are good, but it does help in like at least pointing you in the right direction sometimes. And yeah, if I think the way the AI like probably most affected me was, I want to say it was kind of around like 2021, right? When we like first kind of like started talking about it in one of our classes, right? Was it? No, 2022 or 2023. I can't remember.
Yeah.
One of those years, yeah, where we kind of like really first started talking about it in our class. And it was like after ChatGPT had like first gotten like a really big update. And at the time, I was actually like more interested in web developing and like software development and stuff like that. So like front end and like back end and like full stack, like web developing and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, this is like really interesting because it's so creative, and like I was just really fascinated by it because I love technology, and just trying to wrap my head around all that kind of stuff and like trying to actually use it practically is like a really fun experience. Yeah, I just remember coming to this realization like when it like really started to become a thing where like all these other like AIs were coming out that could just create you a web page in like 2 minutes and can spit out like a bunch of code for you, and you just copy and paste it. Really, you might have to like check it just to make sure it's right and everything like that, but it could really just like completely automate that if it becomes powerful enough, or if you know how to do it right. And so I was like thinking of that, and I was like, well, if I want to do that for like a career, it's either going to be like knocked out completely by AI, or it's going to turn into something like completely different. And I was like, that's interesting, but like I know what I kind of want to do. And so I did some like looking, and it just kind of like turned me more towards cybersecurity. And I've been fascinated with it like ever since then. It's pretty fun.
Cybersecurity.
Yeah.
So cybersecurity and AI is probably able to advance that field even more.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like I'm still like a very young fledgling, somewhere between script kiddie and below that. So I know my place in how like technically like literate I am. But there's some things that some things that I've seen and heard that like there's a lot of damage and a lot of like good you can do by implementing AI into like cybersecurity protocols and things like that. And it's something else.
Yeah, that is. I feel like the cybersecurity and AI
Yeah.
could be like a whole
Yeah.
a whole episode, right? It's really interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah, but what you said, that using AI to help you with various things. And code, especially, I use it myself too. Before I would have to search all over different websites, to get that piece
Stack
of code.
Overflow, all that, yeah.
Exactly. And now I can just go to ChatGPT and say, hey, I want this code. And if it doesn't work and you change that, okay, I'll give you another version, which is really, really good. And I mean, it helps if you know how to read a little bit of code, at least some basics.
Yeah, definitely.
So you can make some minor changes, but it can do it for you. Like before, I don't know, 2 years ago, you still had to be able to kind of make sense of some of the code. Like I do some basic CSS and or an HTML, but now even if I actually can't read it, I can tell ChatGPT that, okay, this doesn't look good, and it will create the change for you, and it will work. And that's really amazing. And another cool thing, actually, I wanted to mention, somebody told me about, you can take a picture now of your refrigerator, upload it to a ChatGPT or whatever you're using, and it will tell you what you can make based on what's in your refrigerator.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that. It's pretty fun. Yeah.
That is kind of cool. I tried that once and it gave me some, I left some pieces out and then I made my own thing, but it was a fun test, and it's really, I feel like it's really good. Like if you want to create a brand and it's like, hey, this is the look I'm going for, it will actually give you ideas and really good ideas. It's quite amazing what it can do. But as we wrap up on this conversation, what are your final thoughts on the future of AI, its positive contributions, and the importance of elevating our consciousness in the midst of this technological advancements?
So what I would have to say is that AI is not going to destroy us anytime soon. So you don't got to worry about that. And today it's nowhere near what it's like in the movies or anything like that. But I would stress that the very way of thinking of like how we think about it, like it's going to destroy us, that's what could be our nail in the coffin. Like even now, it can go that deep if you really want to think about it. We're so obsessed with this idea of like our own like destruction and demise, that if we do if we're so focused on our destruction and demise, that if we don't raise our collective consciousness, then when we finally are able to create these, electronic beings, they're going to look at us and like we're going to basically create like our own self-fulfilling prophecy, where because we've always had this deep ingrained fear of when we make AI, like in 2 years or whatever, it's going to like take over the world and destroy us. And because we have that, we're going to keep pushing that. And AI, when it does become like fully like super intelligent, it's going to see that and it's going to be like, oh, well, if that's what they're expecting, then I need to meet that expectation, and it can go off the rails from there, So instead of thinking of it as like, AI is going to kill us one day, like, no, AI is going to be like here to help us and potentially save us, part on top of with like turning into the self and becoming more self-aware and growing as a person every day.
So basically what you're saying is that, a lot of people speak about watch out for your thoughts and your feelings because it could create your reality.
Exactly. Yeah.
But with AI, if we inject into it the idea that it could destroy us, that could actually take it as a command.
So, this is what needs to be done. Yeah.
Yes, my wish is your command. You want to be destroyed? Okay, I will.
And you want me to do it? Yeah, no problem.
Yes, maybe I'll make you my pets. Maybe you're. It's gonna think that, oh, these people are not good. No. Then we'll put them in boxes or some sort of like. We should teach them a lesson because they told me that they want a society, where everybody is loving and kind, but then it's gonna pick up those that are not and then do something to them to teach them and maybe punish them and things like that. Yeah. But right now we're far away from this.
Right now we're good. Your ChatGPT probably isn't plotting to like
So ChatGPT is still weak AI, and we don't have strong AI yet.
Right.
But it is important. It's that we develop our own consciousness and create regulations on how we develop AI, because the day of it becoming a reality could come rather sooner than later. And that's why it's important that, we keep on developing ourselves, because AI will be like our subconscious mind. Whatever we have suppressed there, or AI is kind of gonna be a reflection of. And it's just some of the values that we should teach to it. I believe there was some agreement between the talk between Mo and Godot and Tony Nader, is that we humans cannot agree on some basic morals and ethics and values, but 3 things that we can all agree on is happiness, compassion, and what was the third one? Wanting to be happy or something like that? No, happiness, compassion.
Was it love or something like that?
Love, yeah, exactly.
Something
We all
like
want
that,
to be loved, we all want to be
Yeah.
happy, and we all want to make sure that those that we love are happy. So to have that compassion. So if we could develop, instead of worrying about AI, if we could just focus on actually developing those qualities in ourselves, that's more important than...
Then we won't have anything to worry about.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'm very inspired to to continue to do the same myself, and to do this whole idea of how you live so close to nature. And I feel like this will be sustainable living, and it's a whole episode on its own too. And it's so important, and I see more and more talks and conversations about people wanting to build their own off-the-grid communities.
Yeah, definitely.
That's so inspiring. I really love the idea of taking the positives of technology and also embracing nature and simplicity. And I really, really have hope, for humanity, with people like yourself who are fully embodying that and are a great example for others. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom on consciousness and AI. And everybody stay tuned for more enriching conversations on being and becoming.